Hey everyone, welcome to our first Big Money Friday here on To The Point podcast. The first of many Big Money Fridays on the docket throughout the college football and NFL seasons. This Friday, it's only college. NFL starts on Thursday, and every Friday on the show, we are going to be talking about gambling odds. We will be talking about lines for weeks in the NFL. For the NFL Big Money Fridays, I plan on going through every game, the lines, props, everything, those type of things that you want to be interested in, things that you can make money on the weekend, things that you can gamble on. That's what Fridays are going to be for here on To The Point. And today, it's a mix of a big money because we're going to talk about Heisman odds. You bet. We're going to talk about the odds to make the Final Four in the college football playoff. You bet that's going to happen. We're also going to talk about some other lines. How about this weekend? Over-unders, lines for games. Matt Wright, very knowledgeable guy, is going to join us in a little while. He's a professional gambler. Sometimes those are referred to as degenerate gamblers. I don't really like that term. So we're going to talk about all of those things today. We're also going to talk about the transfer portal. I will actually let's start with that. So I'm trying to convert all of you into college football fans because it's awesome. I watched it last night. It's back. Week 0, it was there. But watching 2 games last night, Pitt, West Virginia, that came down to the wire. Penn State, Purdue comes down to the wire. Great theater. But through all the games, through all the craziness, the biggest part of college football over the last number of months has been the transfer portal. And what's happened in the last few seasons in college football is teams, players, have been really given free agency. Where before you commit to a school, you have to go there, even if it's a bad situation. And if you want to transfer, if you want to go to a different school that has interest in you, you have to sit out an entire season. To me, it was an unfair process. It was something that hindered players from developing, hindered. I know I have a friend of mine who plays at UMB with my sister, who I've had on the podcast before, who had to sit out an entire season at UMB. It still happens in the CIS. It's something that is archaic. It's something that doesn't help players. But in this new system, where players are getting name, image, and likeness deals, meaning they're making a lot of money, so they're getting money doing that. They're also in this system. Players are looking at it and saying, "Well, I might not like my situation. This past season, I had a great wide receiver, or I had a great quarterback that could help me boost my stats, that could help me in the NFL draft." And you look around and say, well, I'm not sure I'm going to have that this season. Think of quarterbacks in the last couple of years. One comes to mind last year, Sam Howell, quarterback at the University of North Carolina. Played last year, had a great junior season, decided to come back as a senior. Was one of the top rated quarterbacks to start the season. He ends up going in the 5th round of the NFL draft. Well, why is that? Well, he lost 3 running backs that were all selected in the top 3 rounds of the 2021 NFL draft, and he lost 2 wide receivers, meaning he lost a lot of his firepower. The next season, Mac Brown, the recruiting class wasn't as good. The ACC was a little more competitive. Pitt had a good season. Wake Forest had a good season. The U had a decent season for the U. And North Carolina didn't even make it to the ACC title game. They barely got to a bowl game. He drops in the draft. It might have been prudent for Sam Howell to look around and say, hey, is there a better situation for me? They got some pretty good skill players at LSU. They got some pretty good skill players here. Maybe I should transfer. And that's been happening around the world of college football. It's happening every school, big schools, small schools, players are leaving. I have a list of the biggest players that have left their ex location, and I'm going to wait for Ryder to get on here because this is a big part of our conversation today. But there are big names that are moving across the country, moving to different schools. And it's incredibly interesting. And I still think we're waiting to hear about the impact that this is going to have, positive or negative, on college football. I think, in a sense, it's a positive thing because, as I mentioned, players do have the freedom to move. College football and has been labeled as, college football players have been labeled as student athletes for a long time. That's a crock of shit. They are athletic students, and for the majority of these young men, getting an education comes second because they are there to get to the NFL. They are there to achieve a dream. They're there to change a lot of their families' lives. Not to mention the NCAA, which is, you've heard me rail about the NCAA many times. I'll save that rant for another day. A corrupt system, and they've been profiting off the backs, off the likeness, of you will, of these, if you will, of these players for a very long time. So why shouldn't these young men profit from what they put on the field, their talents, their ability to market, their ability to sell products, whatever it might be? Charles Barkley gets paid for Subway ads. Simone Biles gets paid for Subway ads. Why can't these students? Well, they figured out that they can. Schools have been paying players under the table for a long time, except they couldn't do advertising because that's against the rules. You can't do that. Reggie Bush got stripped of a Heisman Trophy. You can't do advertising. You can't promote yourself. You can't make any money, but we're going to pay you money. We'll give your mother a house. We'll give your sick grandmother good medical attention that she would never receive otherwise. So now players have the ability to be players. College football players, you might say, yes, they're young men, which they are. I remember my first year of university. I'm a hell of a lot different person now than I was then. I was an 18-year-old kid. I didn't know much about life. I was naive. I was stupid in a lot of sense. And I was pretty grown up for my age. And I was still all of those things. I knew what I wanted to do when I grew up. At least I thought I did. Then I found this and I realized I wanted to do this and not do journalism because that's really a dying industry. So you change so much. And is it dangerous to give an 18-year-old kid $2 million? Absolutely. Absolutely. But if institutions are paying families under the table, if institutions are paying players under the table, then institutions, because they're trying to give them a good education, right? They're trying to teach these kids the right way, providing them with a financial advisor, providing them with an accountant, whatever you want to label this person, seems like a pretty good idea to me. Seems like something the institution could do. Seems like something the family could pitch to the young man so he isn't blowing $2 million in the case he doesn't make it to the National Football League, if he doesn't make it to that next level. That's where I see this as a good thing, because you should be able to profit off the work that you do. Why do we go to work every day? We don't go to work every day because we love it. If you own a business, I think you like it more than just say an employee, but you like your job in most cases. You go to work. When you're an NCAA player in the past, you couldn't make any money. Sure, you love playing football. It's a privilege. You get a good education. Okay. That's the carrot that you're dangling in front of me. That's what I'm going to bank on when I'm an NFL player and I don't read a book for the rest of my life. What do I care about a good education? I want to get to that next level. I want to make it to the pros. So, long story short here, the business of college football has drastically changed. They are professional athletes. They are. They may be 18 years old in some cases. They might be 24. Players are staying in college longer, you're starting to see, in some cases, because they're transferring to different schools to get a different opportunity. Something that is currently set up in college football that is different from say, collegiate basketball, you have to play 3 seasons of NCAA football. Shouldn't be that way. I love college football. I watch a ton of it. Gonna watch it again tonight. West Virginia. There's a West Virginia Pitt last night. The game tonight that I'm interested in. TCU, Colorado, late night. Be watching that for sure. What was I thinking? Western Michigan playing night. Watch Western Michigan tonight. But back to where I was going. You have all of this, all of this pumping out, and players have to stay for 3 seasons. In NCAA basketball, you only have to stay for 1. That's going to change in the next couple of years because the one and done rule will be back in college football. That's a prediction, but I think I'll be right. College football players shouldn't have to stay 3 seasons in play for NCAA football. To me, if you want to make it 2, make it 2. That's something that still should change because football puts so much wear and tear in your body. In particular, running backs that have to play 3 seasons of NCAA football is ridiculous to me. They get cut off already in the NFL. They don't get second contracts. They get beat up. Why take away your living more unless you're playing college football for 3 seasons and you're getting a big check? And that's something I expect to see. We hear about the quarterbacks. Bryce Young at Alabama last year brought in $2 million in NIL money. I expect he's going to make more than $2 million this year because he's the reigning Heisman winner, and he's playing for the University of Alabama, looking to win a national championship that he lost last year to Georgia. But you're telling me a guy who just won a Heisman, who made $2 million last year, is not going to make more money this year? Going back to school for Bryce Young might be a good thing, so he can make more money. In some cases, guys should take advantage of their situation. Guys that maybe don't have the greatest NFL prospects should be able to get some money to have a nest egg when they leave college. It's a pretty good benefit to go to college, have no student debt, be an alumni forever where you're respected, you played football. In the States, nobody is loved more than a college football player that played at a school. A Notre Dame offensive lineman gets more prestige than any other celebrity that's gone to that school. Manti Te'o is still beloved in South Bend. Just think about the athletes that go back. Brady Quinn was a bust of a quarterback in the NFL. He's loved in South Bend. They love him in Notre Dame. So you're loved forever. You have a nest egg when you leave, and then you can go on to your future career. It's not a bad life. You got $2-3 million in the bank, then you go start your other career. It doesn't have to be media. You see guys, Brady Quinn's on TV. I watch him on Fox every week. Great looking guy. Could be on the cover of Men's Health. But he could have been a guy that benefited more. I think of some of the players in past college football that would have raked money with NIL. Reggie Bush comes to mind. Johnny Manziel. Johnny Manziel would have made a pile of money because he was just a star of stars, man. He was bigger than the sport. He was bigger than the SEC. He was Johnny Football. He was Johnny Money. I bought in. I had a Manziel jersey. I still love him. Wish he was still playing. The good old days at Texas A&M when they were good, when they were relevant. Manziel, Reggie Bush, who else? Honestly, a guy like Manti Te'o. Followed even before this documentary. His story was big. He was interviewed by many people. That season, he would have made some money after the death of his grandmother and the fake death of his fake girlfriend. He would have gotten some money from advertisers, for sure. I'm happy they can. I'm happy players are getting paid, but that's the new system in college football. You're a good talent, even if you're not. I heard the Oklahoma offensive line. It's offensive linemen. They're not prestigious. They're not well known. They got a deal with I think it was like a concrete company. In the trenches, offensive lineman, that works. Telling me in Norman, Oklahoma, people are going to just eat that up? They love that shit. They're looking at their team and looking at the Oklahoma offensive line. Why wouldn't I go with this company? I recognize these faces. This is my team. These are my football players. Let's do it. Makes total sense. Makes total sense. So I love college football. It has so many flaws. Don't get me wrong. It does. The system is getting better for sure, but it can be improved. It certainly can be improved. And I'm hoping that with this NIL money, I'm hoping that with new opportunities for players, the ability to move around, that it only helps the sport. Not to mention, currently there are 9 to 10 conferences in Division 1 football. When you have the SEC, you have the Pac-12, you have the Big 10, the Big 12. It's going to shrink. It's going to come down to 2 to 3 conferences that matter, then you have a bunch of schools that nobody cares about. And then maybe Notre Dame still sits out of it. I don't know. We'll ask Matt Wright about that. He's a Notre Dame expert, college football big fan, and he's here on Big Money Fridays because he's one of the best gamblers in the biz. I'll bring him in. It's been a minute since he's been on, but Ryder, good to see you. How are things, my friend?
Good, buddy. And please do not call me one of the best in the biz on that one. Maybe actually right now I am seeing the board pretty good. So for the last week or so, I think I could take that. But a backdoor cover kind of got the best of me last night. But went 3 for 4, won a little bit of money. But no, things are good, man. I'm pumped about the college football season. Looking forward to talking some football today.
Yeah, was it Western Michigan that got you last night against Oak
Western
State?
Michigan
Yeah.
got me. And the worst thing is like this is gambling for you. You look at that game after the third quarter and that's the one I already checked off. I'm winning this game. And then it's 22-7 in the fourth quarter. Like how does that happen? And then I win the other 3 games. The Pittsburgh game, it's 3 points after the first quarter, and then they go on a heater after that. So that's one I kind of thought, okay, I'm not going to win this one, but I'm going to win the Western Michigan game and vice
Right.
versa, right? So that's gambling for you in a nutshell.
Yeah, it's a frustrating process, gambling, and yeah, a sneaky little Western Michigan backdoor cover on a game that they had no chance of winning against Oak State, who roared out, but then their defense clearly leaked like a sieve in the fourth quarter. What'd you make of last night's games? Obviously, I thought Pitt, both games were great. Pitt, West Virginia came down to the wire. You had Purdue and Penn State, which was fun. But I thought it was a fun start to the season last night in particular with some tight games.
Yeah, for sure. I think, especially with the Thursday night games, sometimes it's very hit or miss depending on who's playing.
Right.
I thought they did a great job for week one. I thought the pregame show was pretty good. I thought the matchups, 2 big matchups. I mean, you got West Virginia and Pittsburgh, like you said, 38-31, great game. Both quarterbacks transfer portal. I know we're going to get into that. And then you look at Purdue and the Nittany Lions. Another great game, 4-point game. I mean, the spread was 3.5, so the odds makers were right on that one. 2 good games to start, and I think the rest of it kind of just went as we thought. You see big blowouts there, and the rest of the games that's kind of not or kind of to be expected. I think with week one with some of those matchups last night. All in all, good night of football. Kind of the calm before the storm. Leading in. There's a couple games tonight. Nothing too major tonight, but tomorrow's going to be pretty exciting.
Yeah, TCU Colorado 11 p.m. TSN. Somebody might be watching that game tonight. I don't know who, but it might be me.
There might be me too.
Yeah. Transfer portal, man. I was just I started the show talking about the transfer portal and giving kind of a deep dive into it for people that don't follow college football as closely as we do. But this offseason has been the transfer portal, where guys are just going every which way. And I kind of give my take on it. What's your take on the transfer portal as a whole?
Well, I think what we see is it's kind of taken the power away from the colleges and put it onto the players. I mean,
Mhm.
if you are going to recruit a player and tell them, you got to tell them exactly what they're going to play. And if you don't live up to that contract, kind of they're going to go somewhere else. The grass, a lot of them are thinking the grass is greener, right? So they're going in that direction, especially this year. You've seen it kind of when it first came out, you had the odd player do it, but really it didn't really take force until I would say this offseason where we just see everyone switching. Is it good for the game? Maybe. I don't know. Ask me in a few more years. Let's see how this year plays out. I think we got to see it over the span of a little bit longer. I think it's the shiny new toy where a lot of people see, okay, if I'm not getting exactly what I think I deserve or what I want, I'm going to go somewhere else. I think it's good for some situations where maybe a player, does need a fresh start, right? Maybe a coaching change switch where you got recruited by, I use this example, quite a bit in my hockey career. I signed with Shawinigan Cataracts in the off season. There's a coaching switch change, and the new coach coming in had a different vision. So I knew, okay, maybe this isn't going to be the place for me. So I decided not to stay. Where that a transfer portal for me, in college football, if I was in that scenario, I'd probably go somewhere else, right? So in that aspect of things, I think it's great. Now, what I don't like is I don't like the fact that you see people switching just because, the going gets tough, I'm going to go somewhere else, or someone else comes in, I'm going to go to this spot, or I'm going to jump this team, or kind of, okay, they look like they're going to be good. They need a player in a cornerback position. I'm going to go there because we have a better chance of winning. I don't like that side of things, but like we said, I think it's going to take a few more years for us to really get a kind of a grasp on if it's good or not for college football.
Right. And I have a list of guys here that are of interest. I'm gonna start listing some guys off, and we'll stop and talk about different guys that pique your interest. So number one, I listed this guy because I know we both find him funny, and he's transferring. He's a guy that, to the latter point you just made, he's leaving with no good reason to leave his school he just left. And that would be Bo Nix, who's transferring from Auburn to Oregon. And he's a junior, which I couldn't believe. He's still got 2 years left of college football eligibility.
That's crazy.
Funny. But this one doesn't pass the smell test for me, and I'm sure you'll feel the same way.
Yeah, I hate this one. I think it's honestly, I lost a lot of respect for Bo Nix because Auburn gave him the world.
Yeah.
They gave him the absolute world. They gave him more rope than I think he deserved. They made him a starter right away. Right out of high school, and true freshman, which you don't see much of in college football. And it feels like we've been watching him now for 3 or 4 years. Seems like I've been watching him since middle school. But Auburn's given him every opportunity to succeed. I feel like that is one of those situations that, you should not be leaving in this case. Like I said, it's not like he's not going to be the starter at Auburn. Like, you're going to be the starter at Auburn. So, and Auburn's a great school. The fact that you lost some big games, like, that's not on Auburn. That's maybe more on you. So I don't like this move at all.
Right. And including that, he lost to Penn State last year, which I get, it's a Big Ten school, but that's a tough loss because you're the SEC. You're supposed to be the best conference. He's just not that great of a quarterback. I think that's what we could both agree on. He decides to leave for Oregon, the easier conference, which of course it is. The Pac-12 is not as tough, but I'm not so sure how great a year they're going to have, and they have a tough opponent week 1. We'll get to that in a little bit. Mm-hmm. Number 2, and I got 4 guys on this list just for this team. Let's start with the coach, and that would be Lincoln Riley, leaving Norman, Oklahoma for USC. I understand-ish why he's doing this. I understand the USC prestige. I know you'd have a hatred for USC being a Notre Dame guy. But trying to rebuild this program, I can appreciate the fact that he wants to try to build back one of the pillars of college football.
Well, he's trying to do so with the transfer portal.
Yes,
I think just looking at some of the names that have gone over, you got Jordan Addison, you got Caleb Williams, you got Travis Dye, the list goes on and on for like top players that he's been able to bring over. So, I guess you got to tip your hat to him on that side of things, because as we know, college football, one of the biggest things is recruiting. So he's done a good job there. For the first time, and I can honestly say probably well over 5-6 years, a decade even, I'm excited to see what USC brings. Notre Dame is has just demolished USC over the last 10 years. It really hasn't been close. And that used to be such a great rivalry. I'm really looking forward to that coming back. And I mean, USC, for Lincoln Riley moving over, listen, coaches are going to do what's best for coaches in the sense of, listen, money talks. You got an opportunity to rebuild like kind of transform an organization, put your stamp on things, really, retool that whole, USC used to be a powerhouse. When I was in middle school, high school, USC was, supposedly favorites for national championships, winning national championships. And now they've been, they 5-5 and 6, 7-5, years that you're just, oh man, USC's really gone down. I'm excited for USC. I think more people than ever want to see what this team's going to bring this year.
And even the fact that USC is 17th on the top 25 ranking, I don't recall a year where USC was ranked to start a season. They never were, Ryder.
They had a year. They had a year, I think it was 2018, maybe 2018, I think just before pandemic, where they went on a little bit of a run towards the end of the year and squeaked into the top 25. I think they finished 8-3. Where they started 3-3. They went on a little bit of a heater at the end, but never anywhere where you're like, okay, this team actually has a chance to compete for a national championship or to get into a playoff. That hasn't been the case since I think the playoff format came out. We haven't even seen USC even close to it.
I like the Jordan Addison transfer because he played with Pickett last year. He won the Fred Blitnikoff Award winner as the best receiver. He probably looked at his situation, and Keaton Slovis goes there. He played okay last night. They win the game. But he's not as good of a quarterback, and I think he sees Caleb Williams as an opportunity for him to maintain his draft status going into this year, and I respect him for doing that and looking forward to his future endeavors.
Well, one thing when it comes to receivers, I think stats mean more than anything when it comes to. I mean, I'm no NFL scout, or I'm not drafting NFL players, but when you look at things, when it comes to receivers, it really does come down to numbers. Offensive line, defensive line. It really does. Numbers aren't the end all be all, but wide receivers, you need to catch the ball and you need to put up big numbers. Scouts need to see us catch the ball. And I look at him and Caleb Williams, he's supposed to be a top 3 Heisman, finalist as of before the year starts. We'll see, right? I mean, we're a long ways away from announcing a Heisman Trophy winner, but right now he's 7-1 in Vegas odds. That's third best behind CJ Stroud and Bryce Young. So Caleb Williams should be a dominant quarterback in the league this year. So I mean, I'm sure it's a win-win for both Addison and Williams.
Yeah, I agree. I think that's a good one. Let's go Brian Kelly, leaving your Notre Dame Fighting Irish for LSU. I mean, you can't make the argument that he's leaving for a better program because he isn't right now. He left for the money and maybe left for the opportunity to get better recruits because it is tough to recruit at Notre Dame because there are academic standards that you have to follow.
It's Notre Dame's the hardest place to recruit in college football. I don't care what anyone says it is. It's have to like you just said, you have to meet a certain academic standard, and that is not the case for 99% of NCAA college football.
Right.
At Notre Dame, you are actually a student athlete.
Yes,
and you have to be a student. You have to be a student athlete. I know every other college says they are, but you actually have to be at Notre Dame, and that's one of the reasons why I love Notre Dame. But saying that, I have no respect for Brian Kelly. I really don't. You know what? If I saw him on the street, I'd just keep walking by. Really. I just the way he went about it last year is what coaches are going to leave. Like I said, like we were just talking about Lincoln Riley, coaches leave.
Yes.
It's another thing to leave when your team has a chance of making the college football playoff. Like you're right in the mix of things. Leave the day after it's done. Like don't leave beforehand. It's just and the press. It's just nothing sad. It's just a bad taste in my mouth. A bad taste. And he was a great. He did a really good job for Notre Dame, and he really revived the team, and they've made national championships. They made college football playoffs. Whether or not you agree with it or not, they have. So
he's won a ton of games at Notre Dame.
They've won a lot of football games. So you have to respect him as a coach. I don't respect him as with the decision he made on a personal level at the timing he made that decision.
Yeah, in particular with the players and how he did that with them, and he called them in for that BS
Oh,
meeting early in the morning and then left. Like it was messy. I didn't like it either. I think Lincoln Riley did a better job of it because he left earlier. You know, he
yeah.
didn't he wasn't in a spot where they're gonna make the college football playoff. He lost his last game that he was there. He knew they were done. They're gonna play in a bowl game, but it was inconsequential and he could go do his business. And I think Brian Kelly, who's a respected coach, should have respected that process.
Yeah, for sure. And to say that too, I know people are saying, "Oh, Lincoln Riley left for a bowl game." I'm sorry, but at the big schools, some bowl games do not matter at all.
In particular to Oklahoma, it doesn't
In
matter.
particular to Oklahoma, in particular to a Notre Dame, and the only bowl games that should matter are your college football playoffs, maybe your road. There's 5 or 6, maybe not even really. It really comes down to your college football playoffs, and for the meaningless, for some schools, bowl games aren't meaningless, but other schools, bowl games are meaningless. And to leave when you have a meaningless bowl game, I think is different than leaving when you still have a chance to make the college football playoff.
Agreed. Yeah, no, he did it fine, and they had Bob Stoops come in, he coached the game. Then now Brent Venables, another transfer from Clemson, is now at Oklahoma. Do you know who Brian Kelly's quarterback is this year at LSU? He's a transfer.
Yeah, I do, but it's not coming to me. I do.
Pac-12 quarterback.
Oh man, it's not going to come to me. I'm not going. I'm
It's
not going to sit here.
Jaden Daniels from Arizona
From
State.
Arizona.
Yeah.
No way. Okay,
Yeah.
that's going to be interesting. Like, especially with LSU, man, they got a lot to prove in the sense of they won a college national championship. With Joe Burrow. No, not too long ago, 2 years ago, to be specific. So they really took a step back. Let's see what they have to bring this year. I kind of hope they lose every game, but we'll see what happens.
I don't think they're going to be great, so I think you're going to get your wish there. JT Daniels, we saw last night, went from Georgia to West Virginia. He
Yeah.
obviously was on the bench last year while they were winning a national championship. This makes sense. The only problem for these type of transfers, Ryder, as you know, you're going to a far less good of a program. You're going to a poor program, and he got killed last night. He had no time to throw that offensive line looked problematic, and I don't know if it's going to make him look. If the first night's any indication, it's going to be a tough year for JT Daniels.
Yeah, I mean, we've seen that with West Virginia quarterbacks for I think the last 10 years. They love bringing in the gunslinger. They love the deep ball, but they don't do a great job protecting their quarterback. And I mean, to me, last night was the easiest bet in the world, the over in that game.
Right.
West Virginia puts up 35 points a game. They may lose half of them, but they're putting up 35 points. They've struggled with defense over the past number of years. And like you said, sometimes when you move, you have to understand you're gonna have, especially at the offensive line position, you're not going to have as much protection. You may still have a few weapons. Obviously, your weapons might not be as strong. You'll still have 1 or 2 real good receivers. But the biggest thing for quarterbacks is I think the offensive line makes such a big difference in college football standards.
Quinn Ewers, Ohio State, is now with Texas as Texas tries to revive themselves a little bit. He's kind of the stopgap writer before the Arch Manning gets out of high school
Yeah.
and can go to Texas. I wanted to float this by you. Last night, I'm watching the Fox telecast pregame, as you mentioned. I think they do a pretty good job there on Fox. I like most of the guys. Leinert's good. Brady Quinn. I mean, you just look at him and you fall in love.
Notre Dame guy, buddy.
Yeah, I know. Another bust quarterback at Notre Dame in the NFL, but he was good in college.
He was.
I see Urban Meyer sitting there. Had a terrible stint in the NFL. That's well documented, but that doesn't mean a college wouldn't scoop him up because they'll scoop up anybody that they think can help them win football games, as you know. Texas has Sark right now. Year one didn't exactly go great. He struggled a lot there. They got to play Oklahoma. I think Baylor's going to be pretty good this year. We'll talk about them in a bit. I think it's a decently strong Big 12 this season, actually. Oklahoma State's no slouch. What about Urban Meyer sniffing around the Texas job if things don't go swimmingly in the next, say, year or two?
I'm sure Urban Meyer's sniffing around a lot of places. I'm sure he's sniffing around the bar down the street too.
Right, yeah.
Listen, someone will hire Urban Meyer.
I think so too.
He's going to get another coaching job. Texas, they're not Texas anymore. They're not where they used to be in
They're like
college
USC.
football. They're exactly, and you want Texas to be better. And they still put them in games. They hype them up. You watch Texas and you want them to win once in a while. Like you want them to win a big game, and they just don't win big games. They're kind of like Michigan, honestly. Just not honestly not as good. But
Right.
to me, they're a lot like Michigan in the sense they just get so much hype and they just do nothing with it. And I think Texas is going to have a pretty good year this year. I think their year is going to be better. But like you said, the division is very tough this year compared to where it was, I think, last year and even the years before. But they need to have a good year. If not, you're going to see some changes there because when people say football, they think Texas. Like Texas is football. So you have to put a better program together. You have to win. Texas needs to be in a college football playoff within the next 2-3 years, or I don't know what's going to happen. Like they're obviously still going to sell out. They're still going to get good players because it is Texas, but they're not getting the best players, and they need to make something happen this year. I honestly believe Texas is going to be better this year, though. I could see them being in a top 10 and at the end of the year potentially. They need to be.
Yeah, they do. They need to have a big year. Quinn Ewers had a lot of hype. He was getting paid in high school because he backed out of his senior year of high school to go sit at the bench Ohio State, but he doesn't even get a chance to play a game there because C.J. Stroud has obviously took the world by storm. So now he's in Texas. He's the starting quarterback. Jackson Dart has left USC because Caleb Williams comes in. He is now at Ole Miss. This is an interesting one for me because I like Ole Miss. Just that I love their coach. He's interesting. He's a great interview. He kind of bucks against the system. They had a really good season last year in a tough SEC, and I don't think we really got to see all of what Jackson Dart could do at a USC that's, as we just talked about, is pretty poor. So I'm looking forward to see what he can do with Lane Kiffin this year at Ole Miss.
Yeah, I mean, Lane Kiffin, he's quite a character as well. I mean, we don't need to jump into him too much, but they're an exciting football team to watch. When Ole Miss is on, I'm watching them play because normally it's an entertaining game. Something is happening in Ole Miss games. I mean, I don't know. Maybe it's the blindside factor, that people saw that movie. Okay, we'll watch Ole Miss a little bit. But honestly, they had a great year last year, like you said, in a tough SEC. The last few years, Lane Kiffin has done a good job with that program. Let's see where it keeps going. Before that at Florida Atlantic, he made that program better. So I think I'm very excited to see what they bring to the table this year. And like you said, Dart, he's gonna be a good player for them. I think. I mean, I'm not gonna say that they're gonna go out and have some big upsets this year, but there's a team you never know. Like I could see them in a top 15, top 20 if they get hot. You never know.
I think they can beat A&M. I think they can. We talk about LSU. I think they can beat LSU for sure. I think they can beat Auburn. It gets to the Georgia, Alabama. That's when you kind of pump the brakes. But I think they could be the third best team in the SEC. I wouldn't be surprised if that's where they finish.
Yeah, that wouldn't surprise me at all. To me either. Like to me, the one team that Texas A&M, man. I just can't get behind Texas A&M. Something about that team, they always hype them up, and they just every time they're on the national stage on like any big game, they just don't have anything to show, in my opinion. Especially last year, I just couldn't get behind them.
Yeah, and it was crazy because they beat Alabama, but it was still such a season that you forget because
I know
games that they should have won.
And that's the problem with them. It's like, yeah, they beat Alabama, and obviously that's an incredible accomplishment. But then you lose games where you're like, you were 25-point favorites.
Right. Yeah, they're frustrating. Do you know who Oklahoma's new quarterback is?
Yes, great addition. I think content-wise, playing-wise, I like them. Oklahoma's going to be a good football team. They always are. So I have Oklahoma contending again this year.
Me too. I think they can sniff around it for sure. Yeah, Dylan Gabriel comes over from UCF.
Yeah,
he's looked good so far in his college football career.
UCF is a great program for the conference they're in. They do a great job of recruiting. He's had a great career so far. I think he's going to really shine in Oklahoma.
Agreed. They always have a prolific offense. They always, and you go to, I mean, Lincoln Riley's gone, so it's Brent Venables, the new head coach, a defensive-minded guy. But in the past, you go to Oklahoma, you get put on a bigger stage, and people start to look at you for the NFL draft. So that can only help. That can only help him. And then the last one that piqued my interest I have on the list here is Spencer Rattler, who was the favorite to win the Heisman Trophy at the start of last season. Was at the University of Oklahoma. Disastrous year for him. He ultimately gets benched for Caleb Williams, and now he is transferred to South Carolina, so he's in the SEC in a tough conference. I'm kind of rooting for the guy to bounce back because he looked so bad last year, but I'm interested to see how he does.
Yeah, like we said, when you go to a big school like Oklahoma, it is sink or swim. So yeah, he had a tough year last year, especially, where he was supposed to be at the start of the year. Now he's, some would say, taking a step back, going to a South Carolina team. Listen, South Carolina's they're a good football team. The Gamecocks always play well. They're not the bottom of the SEC. All right. They're an SEC school. They're going to win some games. What's that?
They're not Vanderbilt.
So, oh my, don't get me started. I was looking at the college football, ranking of who should finish first in each conference.
Right.
Some idiot. There was 177 for Alabama. There was, some idiot had one for Vanderbilt to win the SEC. Like, are you? I just think
Hawaii, and he rode the wave of momentum.
Oh my! I was just disgusted with seeing that. But anyway, back to where we were going. Listen, I hope Rattler has a good year because he at one point was supposed to be one of the best quarterbacks in the world for his last year. So let's see what he can do with a new team, new system, new coach, and a fresh start. And one thing about there, yes, there's still a lot of eyes on you, but there's not as many. You can throw an interception and be able to go back out on the field the next time out. So
yeah, you don't got to look at the coach and be like,
no, and especially at those schools, for the most part, there isn't an absolute stud behind you that if you do have a bad game, then you're done. Like he probably will play every game, and I hope he has a big year.
See, that's the transfer portal. There's also a Jahmyr Gibbs who I have written down, but we'll mention him in a bit. He's going to Alabama. He's a running back. But yeah. Interesting things happening. Before we get to who we see winning the big conferences, I want to talk about Michigan for a second. They obviously made the Final Four last year. They beat Ohio State. It was a big year for Michigan. It was Jim Harbaugh saved his job. He's riding the wave of momentum. But now going into this season, people are already mad after forgetting about all the good he did last year, where he has two quarterbacks in Cade McNamara, who obviously beat Ohio State last year and had a pretty good season, and Denny McCarthy. He's decided he's going to start each of them in the first 2 weeks of the season. They play like Western Michigan and Hawaii, so they'll easily win both games.
You'd think.
And then he'll make maybe Hawaii might cover, but we'll see. And then we'll see. Then he's going to see where this goes. I hate this. To me, he's just not making a decision. He's got to let the players figure it out. You figure it out, Jim Harbaugh. But where do you stand on this?
Yeah, it to me, you already know where it's going to go. Like it's not like you're playing two, strong opponents. You're not like you're playing two top teams. Those are games you should win by 3-4 touchdowns or more. So it's like both guys should look good. So So what are you doing? To me, this is just I don't get it at all. Like what you have in Cade McNamara, just name him the starter. Like if that's your guy, name him. If it's McCarthy, then name him. But like these 2 weeks aren't going to change anything, in my opinion. Like both, they should win the games. Like if you throw up one throws up 5 touchdowns, the other throws up 6. So now the guy who threw up 6 should be the starter week 3.
Right.
Like this isn't a World Juniors, or I would even use like a Stanley Cup playoffs where you have 2 guys where you really are playing tough competition and okay, let's throw them each a game and then see where we go. Like that's not the case here. You're playing two opponents that you should beat easily. they're both going to play well. And even if they don't play well, like, you know what you're doing anyway. I don't like it. I don't like it at all.
No, it's stupid. It's just pushing back the inevitable and make a decision.
Why are you creating these headlines? Like, you just had
Yeah.
such a good year. Like, the focus should be on, hey, let's get back to the playoffs and let's win this thing. Not like the just classic Harbaugh. He can't get away from it, man.
No, and just shut up.
Yeah.
Just name one and move on because they're not
But
gonna. Nobody's
this is why I
listening.
love hating Michigan. Like, this is Michigan to a T, man. I just like, they stir the pot on themselves.
Yes, yes, they hurt themselves. They don't even worry like, oh, okay, we're gonna beat somebody. They don't even give you like bulletin board material for the opponent. This is how we're gonna screw up our own program. Like if I was the AD there, I'd be going nuts and be like, just name somebody, Harbaugh. I'm paying you all this money. Just tell me who's starting this weekend so I can tell my fan
And
base.
and if you're gonna do this, you can do this without saying that. You can start McNamara in week 1, and then if you want, you can go McCarthy week 2, and then say in week 2, lad, we want to see what he can bring. You don't have to make this announcement that you're gonna start one, then start the other one before the season starts. Like, you can make that decision after week 1.
Jim Harbaugh, always pushing out the content for us, always pushing out dumb ideas. But we'll see. Michigan's under a lot. I mean, they had a great year, so maybe there's not as much pressure. But after you have a great year, people expect that. Ann Arbor, they want to get back to that Final Four. We'll talk about if we think they'll get there later. Let's go through the big conferences and who you have winning them. When it comes to, let's start kind of close to home for you. Notre Dame doesn't have a conference because they're
Notre Dame's winning theirs.
They think they're better than everybody else, but nevertheless, let's start with the Big Ten, where Notre Dame will probably be in about 12 months' time. Who is winning the Big Ten this season?
Oh, Big Ten. I mean, to me, Big Ten, you got to look at Ohio State. You know, they're supposed to win the national championship, but them or Alabama this year, that's what people are saying. Listen, I'm not a huge Ohio State guy either. They got a tough matchup week 1, man. They got a tough matchup week 1. I could see a sneaky win there, loss for Ohio State week 1. But to me, it's Ohio State and then everyone else in the Big Ten. They got C.J. Stroud. He's supposed to win the Heisman, favorite to win the Heisman. Their offense is honestly second to none, I do believe, this year. You look at what they can do. I'm scared for tomorrow for their offense, what they can bring. To me, I think Ohio State's a clear winner in the Big Ten.
Yeah, I mean, you mentioned Stroud's coming back. They have Henderson back at running back. They lose Olave and they lose Garrett Wilson to the NFL, but Smith and Jabba is the real deal. Also,
He is.
He can burn. He's a good receiver.
I have him as a sneaky Heisman winner.
Yeah,
at 33 to 1. I have him sneaky Heisman winner, man. He is a hell of a football player.
He is. I think he's gonna have a huge season. Wouldn't surprise me if he led the nation in both touchdowns and yards because he's gonna have Stroud can air it out. Like
yeah.
Ohio State, we talk about them always getting into the playoff, and I agree with you about how they get in just based on past merit and not on their present. Just what
they could lose to Notre Dame week 1, and they're still going to find a way to get in.
Yes, and I like Stroud. I like Stroud. Watching him last year, I think he only got better as the year went along. I'm interested to watch him this year, and we'll talk about Heisman in a second. But I agree with you. Ohio State, Big Ten. I don't even think it'll be that close. Michigan, Ohio State game this year. I think it's going to go a little different than it did last year for the good people of Ann Arbor. Pac-12. Interesting division. USC's coming back. You got Arizona State in there. You got Arizona. You got some teams that are still trying to find themselves again. Who do you have winning the Pac-12?
See, to me, the Pac-12 has become very, very interesting this year. It's great because there's more, I think, eyes on the Pac-12 this year than ever before. I think last year there were some eyes. It started to get a little bit more recognition, but this year especially, people are going to be watching the Pac-12. I mean, like we said, we talk about Oregon, Bo Nix coming over. We talk about USC, what they've done. We look at UCLA. They're trying to still figure out their program there. They're supposed to be better. You look at Arizona. At one point Stanford, at one point Washington, both had pretty good teams.
Yes.
You know, they can be sneaky. They're not where they used to be. I have to look at it, and I'm torn between this one. To me, I think it's going to be Oregon. Like we said, I don't think Bo Nix is as good as what people say. Utah, man, Utah is a good football team. So
Mm-hmm.
I kind of look at Utah for a big win in Florida tomorrow. That's
Right.
a big game to start. I kind of like Utah. Utah, if they get points on the road in Florida tomorrow, I'm hammering Utah. I think I'm going to go Utah. I like what the Utes have done, and I'm going to mark me down for Utah. And I think tomorrow, if you're looking at a game, I think you maybe look at Utah over Florida because people love Florida, especially early in the year. I'm leaning Utah.
Utah 2.5 point favorites tomorrow
I'm
at
oh, that's
home.
it. I'm all over Utah in that game.
Mm. I agree with you. I got you. I almost went USC, but I think it's a little too much hype too quick. I think they'll have a good year, like you mentioned. I think they'll be relevant, which is good for them. But it's Lincoln Riley's first year. He doesn't have to. They're not going to jump from garbage to great in 1 year. So I think they'll have a good season. But I agree with you. The Utes got crushed by Ohio State in that bowl game last
Mhm.
season. That's what we remember. But they do have a good football team, and they beat Oregon for the Pac-12 title game last year. I think they'll do it again because they're bringing a lot of the guys back. They got a good program there. So I'm with you on the Utes, just edging out. I think Oregon will finish third, though. I think USC will be second.
Yeah, well, you know what? At least now we're talking about multiple teams. You know,
Yes.
there's like at one point I know they had Washington ranked high. Washington State was ranked high a few years ago, but they really weren't that competitive. Like
No.
to me,
They'd all have 4 or 5 losses.
no, to me this actually this year you're going to see some really good football out of the Pac-12.
Fresno State's not a bad team either.
They're sneaky. They at one point I think was it last year or 2 years ago they snuck into the top 25 by the end of the
Yeah.
year.
Yeah. So Fresno State, they got a big win last night to start the year. They're another
Big win,
sneaky
yeah.
team. ACC.
Yeah, ACC. See, ACC sneaky because I mean, if I'm ever going to go watch a game, the ACC is the closest thing to watch a game. You got Boston College, that's 6.5 hours
Right.
away. At
It's
one
more
point, they were
it's
one
more
hell of a
the U,
team.
man. It's a little nicer weather at the U.
Yeah, I think you got to look Clemson to see what they do after
Mm-hmm.
kind of
A
obviously
down
the
year.
year they didn't want to have. What can Clemson do this year? I think there's going to be a lot of eyes on them. I have to look Clemson just because honestly, for this one, I think you have to go name recognition.
Right.
And just looking at who you recruit, I think you have to go Clemson. I mean, Florida State at one point, won a national championship. The
They're not there
Pittsburgh
yet.
is pretty
Yeah.
good. UNC is just never as good as you think they're going to be. Um, Virginia Tech are sneaky team. Virginia sneaky, Virginia Tech's not. I'm going to stick with Clemson. I think that they're going to win the division or win the ACC.
I agree with you. I have Clemson as well. They're coming off a down year. DJ Ugalele is still trying to prove himself as a college quarterback following Trevor Lawrence. I think he'll have a better season there. And like you mentioned, they got a quarterback that's getting some hype for the Heisman, so they're sort of relevant there, but I don't think the team's that good. I
Mhm.
watched Pitt last night. I worry about their offense for the whole season. They can run the ball. I like parts of their defense last night, but again, they got some issues there. It's not a great conference to begin with, the ACC. There's usually Clemson and then just a bunch of others. And I think people obviously last year was an outlier where Wake had a fantastic year and Pitt
Mhm.
obviously with Kenny Pickett Heisman finalist, but I think we'll see Clemson get back to the top this year. Big 12. Another interesting division this year full of, I think there's some pretty good teams.
Yeah, Big 12 to me, I think the Big 12 is wide open. I mean, you look at Oklahoma, most people would have them winning. I think there's teams like Oklahoma State, look what they did
Right.
last year. Can they repeat kind of? I know we watched them, last night. They heartbreaker for me, but I mean, they threw up 50 some points last year. I know their defense is or 50 some points last night. I think their defense obviously is, questionable, but there's a team we already talked about Texas. What can Texas do this year? Um,
Baylor.
TCU has always kind of been a sneaky team. Don't
Mhm.
sleep on TCU. West Virginia, we saw them last night. Obviously, one loss, but they could upset some teams. I don't know why I'm leaning this way. I am gonna maybe it's just because I want to see it. I'm gonna go Texas. I am
Going
going to
Texas.
go Texas to win just because for more than not, I just kind of want to see them win. But I mean, you got to look at Oklahoma too. You got to look at some of these. Or Iowa State. You know me in Iowa State in Iowa. Like those, I love Iowa. I've never been to the state of Iowa. I'd love to go
Right.
sometime, but I'm gonna go Texas.
Yeah, Iowa State, Brock Purdy's gone, made the San Francisco 49ers roster, so maybe it'll be Brocktober at some point in San Francisco. I'm going with Baylor. I
Yeah,
like Baylor. I like their coach a lot. They just seem to have a really good program there. They always have great running backs at Baylor. They can just
I
get
was
good
I was looking on my list. I was between Baylor and Texas. I think Baylor, and
Mhm.
Oklahoma is always like we said, supposed to be a powerhouse every year too. But
Right.
to me, I kind of want to see someone new. I know
Mhm.
Baylor would be too, but I'm going to go back to Texas on mine. But Baylor's a great pick.
Yeah, Texas would be fun, and I think they will be fun. They got Alabama week 2. That's a
Yeah,
tough.
and
That's a
and
tough
and
one.
that's tough. But the one thing about that if you can go out and keep it, obviously if you
Close.
win, it's awesome. But if you keep it close and let's say you go, 10-1
Mhm.
and a close loss to
That's
Alabama.
close. You're in the college football playoff.
Exactly. You go 9-2, you can still win your division at 9-2, I think, or win your
Yep.
conference, depending on what
Yep.
else happens. And let's say you go 9-2 and you have a close loss to Alabama, you can win that conference.
Agreed. Oh, for sure. Especially in the big. I think in that division, 9-2, you can win the Big 12. SEC.
Oh, well, I mean, this is the one everyone's waiting for, right? Supposedly, this is your powerhouse of college football, right? College
Mhm.
football is the SEC, apparently. But in fairness,
It
they
is.
have the best football team, so
Yes.
it's as much as you want to make the joke that that's where the home of college football kind of is. Oh, man, it's I hate to say it, like I just hate to say it, but I think you got to look at Alabama again. I
Yeah.
I think Alabama though has a tougher schedule than they've had for years past. I look at their schedule, like we said, Texas week 2. They got some other sneaky teams they have to play. They always play Auburn. What can Auburn bring?
They play
I look at
A&M.
yeah, they got A&M. I still got to go Alabama until someone beats them. I know Georgia coming off national championship. I don't think Georgia's going to be as good as they like. I know it's hard to say as good. They won the national championship, but I don't think they're. I don't. I see Georgia missing the playoffs. That's my hot take.
I'm with you. I have them missing the playoffs as well. So
Okay, maybe
I,
it's
I
not so hot then.
well, no, I think we're on the same page. I see them having multiple losses. That's for sure. With Georgia, I think Alabama's going to win the SEC, of course. A team I like, a sneaky little team, is Arkansas. Arkansas with KJ Jefferson, I love him at quarterback. He's fun to watch. Traylon Burks has gone to the NFL. We'll see what he can do with Tennessee. But they got some good players at Arkansas that are coming back. They got a good quarterback that I think is going to get some love and will be drafted at the end of this year. I think Arkansas will pull off an upset against a high-profile SEC school this year, and it just might be Georgia.
Well, Arkansas's got a big matchup week 1.
Yes, against
Big
Cincinnati.
big
Yes.
matchup against Cincinnati. Let's see what Cincinnati can do, right
Yep.
from where they've come from. So they have a lot to prove this year. To me,
Big fun game too.
that's a sneaky game of the week right there, Cincinnati, Arkansas. How exciting is it for Arkansas sports? You look at their basketball team, what they did last year. You look at
Right.
their football team. Like, if you're the athletic director of Arkansas, you must just be, drooling at the mouth, licking your chops. Get that pork on the Barbie. Let's go. Get that pig spinning. Like, they must be excited about what they
Mhm.
have going down in Razorback Nation.
And absolutely, and then you get a first round pick and Traylon Burks. So you're getting guys in the NFL draft. You're getting notoriety. They had a guy go in the NBA. A couple guys go in the NBA draft. So he's looking for a raise right now at Arkansas because of all the good things that are happening down there. Alabama's got Utah State. in
Mm.
week 1, which is interesting. Utah State beat UConn week 1. We'll talk about betting lines in a little bit for this weekend. Let's talk about Heisman when it comes to betting. I got the numbers in front of me. We got CJ Stroud's plus 200, Bryce Young's plus 350, Caleb Williams plus 700. Do you think it'll be one of those top 3 guys that ultimately wins the Heisman Trophy?
Well, I mean, you do look quarterback first. That
Yes.
seems to be the thing. That seems to be where it's shifted kind of from the running back where years ago to the quarterback now. Uh, yeah, I do. Because I think if Jackson Smith and Jobby has a big year, I think you could probably say a reason why because of that is Caleb Williams. So I think they might cross each other out a little bit. But
Right.
yeah, I mean, we'll see what. To me, CJ Stroud has to have a big game against Notre Dame week 1. Like, they have to win that game by their favorite 17.5, I think, right now. I love that number. I love that number as a Notre Dame fan. You're probably looking for Ohio State to cover. But
Am I?
I don't know. I guess we'll find out. But
Yeah.
to me, I mean, CJ Stroud has to go out and have a massive game week 1 against Notre Dame. Like, if they win 21-17, like, that's not good enough.
No,
Like,
not
that's
an
not
impressive win at all. That
like
hurts you.
he needs to go out and put up 40 points against Notre Dame to send a message. I think, yeah, you could look at those 3. It's a pretty safe bet for one of them. At least I'd say 2 out of the 3 of them will be in the conversation at the end of the year. I think you'll see one of them not, because we looked at what happened with Rattler last year. Someone's gonna, hopefully someone doesn't get hurt, but there's a good chance one of these guys doesn't live up to their potential this year. I mean, but they're all good quarterbacks.
Like Will Anderson Jr., who might be the best player in college football for Alabama. He's a linebacker, incredible. Like what a year he had last year. He's got the 4th best odds. I would never bet on him because he's not going to win it. He's never going to win the Heisman Trophy. Fourth best betting odds. That's the books just trying to get people to spend their money. For people out there, do not bet on him because he's not going to win it because he's a linebacker.
Well, you look at the year he had last year, and he was nowhere near the conversation.
He had 20 sacks last season, and you didn't even hear about him.
No, exactly. If you're looking, Heisman, you got to stick offense until something changes where a defensive player wins. You stick offense all day.
I have one more of a long shot bet that I saw with the betting odds that I like. I'm gonna run it by you.
So you're going with you're going with like I did in the NFL with the Raiders. You're going that kind of way.
Yeah, well, I'm thinking of putting like say $5 on this guy just for fun.
All right, let's hear it.
Will Levis at Kentucky. He can air the football out. This guy, they got a prolific offense.
Yep.
I like him. I don't know how good the team's going to be, but I like him to have a big year when it comes to yardage, touchdowns, all the big stats.
Well, you know what? People like Kentucky. If you look at it, Kentucky had a good year last year. People are looking at Kentucky to potentially, be in the top 10 at the end of the year, I think. I don't see them there, but until they win a big game, I don't see them there. But yeah, he's an offensive threat for sure. He's a gunslinger. They love, like, the one thing when it comes to Heisman, you need a gunslinger. Like, you need someone who's going to throw the ball. And there are more eyes on Kentucky this year than I think ever before. I wouldn't say ever before, but within the last 10 years for sure. So I think that definitely helps if you go out and have a big year, that there are going to be eyes on you or on the program.
And you think about like Manziel won the Heisman. They weren't in the Final Four. They weren't in that window of winning.
No.
So he won it that year. And so things can happen where you're not in the even in the Final Four, and you can still get love.
You still have to be in the top 20, 25, though. I think you can't. You can't put up the most yards and be a team that's 5-6.
No.
To me, you still have to be in the top 25 to have a chance.
Agreed. Completely agree. You definitely have to. But he's a guy that just stood out to me because I said I like watching Kentucky. They're fun, and I think he's gonna have a good season. So Will Levis at plus 6,600 might be a decent little bet if you're looking for a long shot Heisman. Let's go Final Four. Let's start with you. Who is in your Final Four at the end of the year? Early season prediction.
Well,
this was tough, by the way.
Yeah, this is tough because I think there's a lot of teams that can slide into that 3rd and 4th spot.
Yes.
I think it's wide open, more than ever before. Um, I think you gotta throw Alabama in there. I think until they're not kinda like the Heisman when it comes to offensive players.
Right.
Until they're not in the Final Four, I think you have to put them in the Final Four. Um,
Agreed.
I think they're there. I think you gotta go Ohio State too. I think you have to put Ohio State there. I think those are the 2 teams that, whether or not I like it, and I don't like it. I don't like saying this. I'm not happy about saying this, but I think you have to put those 2 teams there. Um, I I look at a team like you said. I think you could if Utah gets off to a good week 1 start, they could go on an absolute roll.
Right.
I kind of like seeing a Utah get in there. I like Utah, and you know what? For number 4, just to piss you off, I'm going Notre Dame Fighting Irish in my 4th as my 4th seed.
Of course you are. After week 1, they got like a soft schedule, so that should help them. They don't play any good teams till the end of the year, so I mean I'm not surprised to see you put Notre Dame in, but I
Listen,
mean,
I'm gonna put Notre Dame in, but if I had to find a 5th team,
mhm.
I actually, like I said, I'm gonna go with Texas. I think
Okay.
Texas needs to have a big year.
Okay.
I'm gonna put Texas just for the fact that they need to have a big year.
Notre Dame's not in my Final Four.
Not surprising.
I don't even think they'll finish in the top 10 by the end of the year. There's a hot take for you.
I'll put some money on that with you.
Well, I'll bet you $20 right now.
I'll put some money on that with you.
Okay. Okay. We'll figure that out. We can figure out a
Yeah.
bet, but okay. Fair enough. I like that. So I got same Ohio State, Alabama, just like yourself, because I think we could see both of them. Actually, I'll see if you agree with me on this. I think Ohio State has a better chance of going undefeated than Alabama does.
Yes. Um, like we said, as much as I want to joke about, Notre Dame, you look at the spread, it's 17 and a half points. Like,
Yeah.
Ohio State should win this game pretty easily tomorrow. Um, Alabama's got some tough, like they got some sneaky
Yep.
matchups in there.
Yep.
Like we said, week 2, Texas. That's not an easy matchup.
On the
Um,
road too. That's
on the
another thing.
road, I think Ohio State has an easier trip than Alabama. Like I said it earlier. Alabama's got a tougher schedule than I think I've seen in the last 10 years.
Yeah. So I'm more confident in Ohio State than I am in Alabama being there at the end of the year. I put Clemson in there because again, easy division.
Mhm.
I worry about that pick because we talked about the quarterback position's shaky. They bring back Will Shipley, who I like, but they're also missing Skalski for the first time forever after his 9 years of eligibility. Venables is gone to Oklahoma. So they have some parts I'm not completely comfortable with, but I'm going to put Clemson in there because of the division. They could easily run the table. And my number 4 team, like you, is coming from the Big 12. So I'm going to put Baylor.
Mhm.
Baylor's never been there. They're another new face, and I think I'd be fine with Texas. It's new blood. It's somebody new. But after we saw Cincinnati get in last year, Ryder, maybe I'm being just pragmatic here. But I think we have a better chance of seeing new blood every season with the likes of Cincinnati getting in. If we can see a Baylor, even I have Utah 5th right outside. That,
Yep.
that I think it provides opportunity for different schools to get a look.
And I think they want that, especially with the 4 seed. I think they want to get a new team in every year because we know at some point it's moving to 8 teams. Like
Right.
that's happening. Like
Yes.
that will be happening at some point. So for that to happen, they're going to want new teams in the top 4 to say, "Listen, they're good enough to be in the top 4, so let's get it to 8." So I think 100% you will see a new team that has never been in the college football playoff in the college football playoff this year.
Let me ask you this. Cincinnati's got Arkansas week 1.
Yeah.
That's a tough game. They got a lot of new things going. New quarterback, new Sauce Gardner's in the NFL, Alec Pierce is in the NFL. So they're going through a transition, but they're still ranked. Like they're still looked at as a team that could be competitive. They play in a soft conference, as we know. Beating Arkansas week 1, that's an impressive win. If they run the table again, can they get back to the college football playoff?
Well, they got to win every game. That's first, like you said, they have to run the table. I think one
Right.
loss, you're done. Doesn't matter who you if you have to run the table. it would depend on what happens in other conferences for this one.
Right.
I think it would depend on what happens because if let's say we have a Baylor or a Texas that go 10-1, like let's
I think
pretend
that
we got
could happen.
Alabama 10-1, we got we have let's say Ohio State 11-0.
Yeah.
Let's say we have you
Clemson,
know
10-1.
yeah, if we have some teams at 10-1, I think the only way they get in undefeated is if we have a two-loss team kicking around at the 4
Right.
spot.
Agreed. Yes. I agree with you because I think at 10-1, like say Texas, and they lost one game and they lost to Baylor.
Yeah, and what
Then
sells better, Cincinnati or Texas?
Texas.
What a
Texas.
story that would be to get Texas back in.
And
I mean, not just
especially
because I said it. It's
even Ohio State, Texas 1-4, they love that because that's two.
yeah.
Again, it's completely across the country, but it's two teams that never play each other, and that would sell perfect. They'd sell out any barn that they could in Miami.
Oh, absolutely, absolutely. I got to ask you this question on a college football side note. Did you get a chance to watch the Manti Te'o documentary?
I did. I did. What a story that is. And crazy. I thought it was a very well done documentary. The only problem I had with it is I found they were very nice to the recently turned woman or a transgender woman in this documentary when she was completely at fault, and I felt they were very kind to her, which I had a little bit of a problem with. But you were a Notre Dame fan at this time. This was in 2012. What was it like for you thinking back to it then and then watching the documentary now?
It was crazy. I remember Manti Te'o was my favorite player in college football at the time. Like it was the wildest story. And it's a story you wanted to get behind in the sense of before this happened. Like he was one of the best college football players in the nation. He was having one hell of a year defensively. Notre Dame, the whole school was rallying around what was happening. And they made a charge to the national championship. I know they got smoked in the finals. I mean, that's another story. They got demolished in the national championship final. But regardless, it was crazy. And then when this came out after it, first of all, you have to give like this guy got dragged through the mud afterwards. And
Absolutely.
and this is what a time where catfishing wasn't a thing. Like it just
No.
it no one really this is the first real and like to this extreme too. It's mind blowing how this was happening behind the scenes to him. But man, like I just felt sorry for the guy. I really did. Like it's just like it's one of those things you put yourself in that position. It's like, could you imagine if like that happened to any like it was just a mind blowing. I thought the documentary was very well done. I agree with you the sense that I really do believe there was a victim and a perpetrator in
Mm-hmm.
this case. But it was a wild story in college football, and I mean, it was as a Notre Dame fan, I was just mind blown when it was happening. I was like, "What is going on here?" Like it was just I couldn't wrap my head around it because it was such a new thing that I didn't know what it was. So I think the fact that he still was able to play in the NFL and get to this, like, you got to give the guy mad props, man, for everything going on. Like, I would have been a
I
shell of
agree.
a human being if this happened to me.
I
Like
totally
it's
agree.
it's very surprising. Not surprising. Maybe this is the right word, but we're uh, I'm happy he's still here with us today. Let's just say that if it's crazy that he went through something as traumatizing as that would have been.
The fact that he played in that national championship game, the fact
Mhm.
that he made it to the NFL, he got through all the. I mean, that question that he got asked if he was gay on national is completely uncalled for question. That's I can't believe that. I mean, it shows you the difference in the times. That was a complete that can't be asked. That question. That's nobody's business, quite frankly. But he handled it with. I came away watching the documentary and I like him even more.
Yeah.
He seems like a good dude. Like he just seems like a nice guy, and he was good throughout it. And just he got caught up in the catfish game, which can happen to the best of us. So I no, I found that I thought it was a great documentary, and
Yeah, and
just
it's one of those
well done.
things too. Like I know, oh no, everyone at some point, athletes live away from home for the first time, and
Right.
especially for him, new culture. Like he was just looking to talk to someone who had related values to his.
Yes.
He was in Notre Dame where seeing snow for the first time. Like it would
Right.
talk about a culture shock, right? So it's just a crazy documentary, and And I have so much respect for that guy, and even more now after seeing what he went through behind the scenes, and yeah, honestly great recruiting tool for Notre Dame football. That documentary.
Yes, yes, no, for sure. Yeah, makes you look at it and say, "Wow, this looks like a pretty good school." He had a lot of success, made it to the NFL, but yeah, a great senior year. I think he had 8 interceptions in a senior year, which
He was a
is
stud. He
he
was a
he
stud on the defensive side of the ball. He was an absolute stud.
So yeah, I like him even more. It's too bad he couldn't have a longer career. That he couldn't have worked it out sooner, because then he could have maybe had more success. But he's got a child now. He's married and he seems to be happy. And I think he can be at peace with this story now that he's done this documentary and find some conclusion to it. Let's talk about this week's games when it comes to betting, because I know you'll be betting tomorrow, and let's start with your team, Notre Dame, Ohio State. Ohio State minus 17 and a half. Are you truly betting on your Irish tomorrow to cover?
100%. 100%.
Okay.
100%. I'm betting on them to cover. I'd be betting on them to cover. Listen, I am also betting on them because I am a Notre Dame fan. Let's get that right out on the table right now. I'm not betting them to win. I'm betting them to cover. But
Right.
I think this is a game where I would look at, even as a non, Notre Dame fan, and kind of say, man, that's a lot of points. I
It
know
is.
I know
Yeah.
how good Ohio State is. I really do. But I mean, last year they lost their second game of the year to
To
Oregon.
Oregon. Yep.
Like, they've notoriously not been the fastest of starters, and 17 and a half is a lot. It really is. And I have to take, like, for me though, this is tough because, like I said, I am a Notre Dame fan, so I am biased on this one for sure. I definitely am going into it with a bit of blinders on, but I like them to cover. I really do. Now, to me though, the play on this game is the over. I love the over,
Right.
but if they cover, it's going to be the under. So if Notre Dame covers this spread, I think it's going to be the under. If
Yeah,
Ohio
because
State wins, the game's
they
going
can't
over.
match points with Ohio State.
No, no, you need to block a punt. You need to make an interception. You need a fumble. You need a few things to happen. Um, it's a lot of points, but I mean, but don't be wrong. I would not be surprised if Ohio State covers this either. Like, I'm gonna throw a little action on this game because obviously it's the game of the night. I'm gonna be watching the game, so I want to have
Right.
a vested interest in it. But this is one I might, if I'm off to the side, I might stay away from this game. The only reason I jump on this game is because it is going to be the game you want to watch on the Saturday night.
Right. I feel the same way, because I could see Notre Dame covering as well. Truly, I don't. For some reason, you mentioned your point is spot on that Ohio State starts slow. They lost week 2 to Oregon last year. Not a great team if you look at the end of the year. And Notre Dame, they're going Marcus Freeman's first game as a new coach. I think they'll want to come out and not get embarrassed on his
Yep.
first game. Like, if they lose by 30, that's tough for Marcus Freeman after Brian Kelly leaves and it's
Hmm.
Notre Dame. And I don't care if it's playing Ohio State at the shoe. You still want to put up a decent performance. You don't want to be embarrassed. So I might stay away from this game too, but I don't think it's crazy to bet on Notre Dame to cover. I just don't think it's a game I'm going to bet on, because I don't trust their quarterback position. It's the same two guys that they had last year behind Jack Cohn. Neither of them particularly excited me all that much. So I look at the next game that is the same line, Oregon versus Georgia. It's a neutral site. Georgia minus 17 and a half. I'm smelling an Oregon cover.
I am hammering Oregon cover.
Bo
This is
Nix.
this is one. So I'm big on like a 3 game or 4 game parlay. Sometimes I'll do cut like combo three combo. I like combos because that way if you get 3 to 4, you get a little bit of money back. But this is one I might just throw some money on just this game alone as a singles bet because
Right.
to me, and this is one I may throw on multiple tickets. Like to, tomorrow, Rory gave me a little fun money. Thank you, Rory McIlroy, for going on a little bit of a run last Sunday. He gave me a little bit of fun money for this weekend, and that's one where I might throw Oregon on multiple tickets. To me, this is a
Right.
no-brainer. Oregon plus 17.5.
I'm with you. Bo Nix first game. Georgia. I'm with you about Georgia. They won the Natty last year. It's great feelings in Georgia. Let's repeat all this stuff. They lost the most players out of any team at the draft last year,
Mhm.
and some damn good players too. Mostly on their defensive side of the football, and George Pickens, who looks good in Pittsburgh.
Yeah, this is one I might throw. I might throw a little money on them to outright win.
Oregon, really?
Yeah,
Okay.
just
Yeah.
just for a little, like if you got an extra 5 or 10 kicking around and
Right.
it's paying pretty big, that's one you might be able to make 25-30 bucks on a $5 bet.
I like a three-way parlay, and I put Oregon to cover for sure.
Mhm.
Let's go to. I like Utah minus 2.5 at Florida. I like Utah all day on that, and
Oh yeah,
I
we
think
talked
I
about it
think they're
earlier.
favorites, but I like the Utes to beat Florida.
We talked about it earlier. Give me those 2.5 all day. They are going to win by more than 3. 100%. Give me Utah. Florida is running off one name. Florida. They're
Right.
they're they're not. Listen. They're a good SEC school. They're not Utah. Utah plays good on the road. I know
They
people
do.
are looking at this game and saying that Utah, like, the only reason they're not more of a favorite is because what happened last year. But like you said, people are looking at the end of last year and saying, okay, they're only 2.5 point favorite. Man, Utah's a 7.5 point favorite in this game. I am taking Utah all day minus 2.5.
Me too. I like that one a lot. I look at this line, Ryder. Utah State at Alabama. Alabama minus 40. You like Utah State to cover that?
See, these are games I normally kind of stay away from.
Yeah, this one scares
Um,
me.
these are ones where you're watching and you're just like, come on, buddy, just run the ball, kill some clock, like get a couple first downs here and there. Like
Right.
I 40 is a massive
40 is
number.
a massive number.
Like 40 is such a massive number, but at the same time, like that, this is why I stay away from games like that, because I don't like betting against Alabama because
Right.
like they're Alabama. They can go out and throw up 65 points and win 65-7, but 40 is a lot. If you're going to take a play on this game, I like the under, because normally when they put up scores like this, it's like 70 points or like 65 points.
Right.
And it's like they're going to win like 55-0 or 60-2 or like, sorry, 60-6 or like,
Right.
if it's anywhere near 70, I like the under. But I think I'm going to stay away from that one. But I mean, it's always fun to bet an underdog. I don't like betting teams to win like minus 35, 40, because all it takes is one interception, one fumble, or the starters to come out
Right.
to really ruin. I mean, you look at last night. I took Oklahoma State at minus 22, and they didn't cover that, right? So I mean, I got Michigan State tonight minus 21. I don't love that either, but no,
Michigan, right?
yeah, against Western Michigan. I think they should win that game, but who knows? No, I think you got to stay away from that game if you can. If you're going to watch it, if you want to bet an underdog, I think 40 is a lot of points. So definitely don't take Alabama to lose, though. Don't think this is one of those, they're going to go out week 1 and lose and I'm going to make a fortune. Stay away from those bets.
No.
Stay away from those bets.
That's a bad beat there.
Stay away from those.
How about Cincinnati, Arkansas? Arkansas minus 6.5.
I think that number is right on the number.
I think it's a good one too.
I think that number is one where I think Arkansas wins by either 3 points or 7 points. So that 6.5 is like they know their bet. To me, that number's right on the line there. So I like betting games I'm gonna watch. So that's one thing where I think my heart and my, I guess, head go kind of, they don't see eye to eye sometimes, where sometimes I just like throwing a game on a ticket because I'm gonna watch that game. Where sometimes maybe I see other bets that are smarter to take that have a better chance of winning, but I stay away from it because I'm not watching that game. To me, this one is the game you want to watch. So I am going to throw
on national TV Sunday afternoon.
Yeah, exactly. So like this is a game you want to watch. I'm not going to be able to be available till about 4 o'clock about 5 o'clock, just the start of the Georgia game tomorrow. So
Right.
this is one where I may stay away from just because I'm not watching it. Where
Right.
I have more confidence, like the Utah game, for instance, to
Right.
not be watching that game and throw money on Utah because I like that bet. This one, I think that number's right on the line, so I don't really want to give a safe bet to. If anyone's watching looking for picks, I'm going to stay away just because I'm not sure on that one because I think that 6.5 is right on the number.
How about you mentioned watching a game. Well, it's a standalone game Sunday night. Florida State against your rival LSU, Brian Kelly. LSU is -3. I kind of like Florida State in that game.
So after what Florida State did to me last year when they Notre Dame beat them by 3, my
Right.
God, I had Notre Dame was supposed to win by like 21. Just I think I had $100 on that game. It was crushing. Like so, I am taking Florida State 1,000% to continue week 1 of
Yeah.
these covering, and I think they're going to win. I don't think you go +3. I think you take them to win.
I agree with you. I
I
take
think
Florida State to
they're
win
getting
this
a
game.
bump up because of the coach. They're not getting a bump up because of the team.
No, they got TJ Finley transfer from Auburn at quarterback. He's never been that good. The team isn't that good. They've lost players to the transfer portal. LSU's got to rebuild. They're not as close as even USC is right now at competing. So I take Florida State outright to win. I agree with you. I think Florida State with Jordan Travis will win this game, and Brian Kelly will lose his first game as head coach.
Oh, that
Especially
would be
your
such a great way to end the weekend.
But I'd say the best parlay. I think I like Oregon to cover. Let's see if you agree. I like Oregon plus 17.5.
Yes. Yep.
Utah -2.5 outright win.
That's good. Both those will be on my ticket tomorrow.
And I go FSU to outright win +3 against LSU.
See, that's a ticket I love. I won't be doing that ticket in the sense, and the reason why is because I like getting all my picks in on one day. That's something
Right.
that I like doing. Now, if you like going multiple days, that's great. That's a ticket. That's something I will be looking at that Sunday night, and I might mix that Sunday night in with potentially some tennis, depending on what's going on in the tennis.
If Serena
Um,
Williams is playing.
I have Serena tonight. My buddy's put $50 on Serena before the tournament at 55-1. So, and looking at, I think her losing a doubles was a blessing in disguise for her if she wins tonight.
Agreed.
I like so tonight I'll run through what I'm looking at this evening. So, I'm looking at Illinois, Indiana. I have the over. I'm not a big fan of the pick to be honest, but I have the over.
What's the number?
The number's 46. And the reason I liked it is because it was 46 and not 48.5. I think
Right.
46 is very doable. I'm looking at Virginia Tech -6 at Old Dominion. I think Virginia Tech needs to win that game by more than a touchdown.
They
I
will.
like Michigan State at home -21. I think they have to go out and send a statement week 1 because of what happened last year. And then I'm looking at Serena Williams to win, and then I have the Canadian. I have Bianca Andreescu to win tonight as well.
Is she an underdog against Carolyn Garcia? She should be.
She is an underdog. She's paying 2.15.
That's good.
I have combo 3 on that ticket. It's one of those where I need 3 picks to get a little money back. I need 4 picks to probably double my money, and then I need 5 picks to win a couple hundred. To me, the Bianca one's one where I think a few of the other ones are going to hit, and then if that hits, it's like okay, there we go. There's a little bit more. That's one I'm not very confident in that one. I'm not very confident in the Illinois, Indiana. If I win the other 3, I get a bit of money back, and then you hope that your 4th or 5th picks hit on those kind of tickets.
I don't mind the Andreescu gamble because she's played well. Garcia's been one of the most consistent players on tour for all this, really the back half of this year. But I think that's a primetime match. That's gonna be a fun match to watch. So you can get that on your TV. I like that too. You mentioned Serena. Both women are playing at the same time. Get a
Yeah.
little pip screen going. Get both women at the watching. So I like Serena to win tonight as well. How big of a favorite was she against Tomljanovic?
She was a 1.55. So not great odds. Like I said, the reason I threw it on is I'm going to be watching the match because it's must-see TV tonight.
I'm
Like,
watching every match until she loses, Ryder.
it's same. Like, I have a friends gathering tonight. I'm going to. It starts at 7 o'clock, and I was like, I'm gonna be out of there by 7:45. Like, I'm sorry, but like,
Yeah.
it's one of those things where she is arguably the most dominant athlete in her sport ever.
Yes.
So you have, and it's her last U.S. Open where she's an incredible athlete, and I love watching incredible athletes. I have to watch until she loses.
Completely agree with you. I'll be watching tonight, watching you with Michigan State, throwing that on every once in a while too to see how they're doing against Western Michigan. What's Notre Dame's record going to be at the end of the year?
Realistically, I think realistically you could say 8-3. I think
They won't be in the
eight.
top 10 at 8-3.
I think 8-3 is realistic. I think I would love 9-2. I think 8-3, 7-4 is probably what it's more likely going to be.
Better not be 7-4. I'll be winning our bet there, Ryder.
I know, but I think 8-3 is probably. I think if they go 8-3 this year, I think that's successful because
I agree.
chances are you're losing. Listen, you're probably losing tomorrow, so you're 0-1. I mean, if they win tomorrow, 8-3, oh buddy, here we go.
Yeah.
But if they lose tomorrow, I think they could lose 2 more games the rest of the year and finish 8-3, and people be happy with that season. I'd be happy with that
I
season.
agree. I think that'd be a good season. I agree with you.
So I'm gonna go 8-3 as that number because that's the number I want to see as a fan.
If they win tomorrow, they'll be number 1 in the country on Monday.
No, they won't. Alabama will be number 1 in the country on Monday, even if they win that game.
I don't know.
Even if they win that game, they'll not be number 1. But if they win that game, I'll tell you one thing. You'll see one guy pretty happy Sunday morning. You'll be getting a call from me late, probably with a couple beers in me tomorrow night.
Yeah. All right. Well, I'll be awake, so I'll stay alert. I'll stay ready for that phone call. But Ryder, always a treat to have you on, man. Love talking college football with you, and we'll be doing this plenty during the college and NFL season. So don't be a stranger.
Absolutely. Well, appreciate having me on, Jug, and yeah, looking forward to college football tomorrow, man. It's always an exciting time of year, and I know me and you are pretty passionate guys about it, and it's one of those things where I've gotten like my old roommate Craig Langell. He's now into college football. There's another guy. I love getting more people into college sports.
Me too.
So,
Me too.
it's
I
just
take pride in it.
it's something where I love college sports, and I feel like it's just because we don't have college sports around here. We have AUS. I played AUS hockey. We have AUS sports around, but we don't have that big college football, college basketball like they do in the States. So not a lot of people get to see it growing up. But I wish more people in the Maritimes watch college sports, and the ones that do, I love talking about it. So if you're a college football fan or college basketball fan, please just shoot me a message. I'll talk all day with you.
Perfect. Well, have a good weekend, and we'll talk to you real soon.
Have a good one, buddy.
Awesome to have Ryder on the podcast. Always a pleasure to chat with him. Always fun. And his Notre Dame Irish, I don't disagree with him. 17.5 tomorrow. We'll see what they can do. It's a sneaky. I'm not betting that game because it worries me, but I wouldn't be shocked if they do cover. Notre Dame is a good school. As much as I rib on Ryder, they know what they're doing down there. They're smart at the very least. They are smart people because you got to be smart to get into that school. So you get that game. I'm looking forward to this weekend. I'm looking forward to watching Kentucky, Cincinnati, Arkansas, as we mentioned, is another game that's very much on my docket. Utah, Florida. It's an 8 o'clock start Saturday night. That should be great. You have a Sunday night game, FSU, LSU. That's Sunday, and then it finishes off Monday with Clemson, Georgia Tech. So games the next 4 days. It's amazing. You got U.S. Open with Serena Williams. You have UFC Tuivasa versus Cyril Gane as well this weekend, which I'm going to talk about tomorrow morning on the podcast while we do our final NFL preview with the AFC West. I'll talk about the UFC event. I'll even talk about the betting lines when it comes to who's favorite and the fights going on tomorrow in France. So everybody, it's Labor Day weekend. It's a long weekend. Enjoy it. Content coming tomorrow. Lots of games coming throughout as well. So enjoy it. Enjoy the long weekend. Happy Labor Day. And as always, this is To The Point.